need for natural gas. As many of you may know, some 90% of the electric generation in New York City is gas-fired. Natural gas is the cleanest of the fossil fuels. There was a time when the entire fleet virtually was coal-fired. They're now gas-fired, and there has been growth in demand. I think historically, Con Edison would tell us electric demand has ranged between 1.5% and 2%. With the recession a couple of years ago, that fell off and became virtually flat. But I think the latest data indicates that there's still some growth going on, whether it's attributable to the profusion of electronic devices or to business growth or whatever it might be. We have a growth curve, and in fact, some new generation assets have come on as recently as this past July. In Astoria, for example, it's called the Astoria Energy 2 plant began commercial operation, a brand new gas-fired plant. 550 megawatts began operation in Astoria. We expect in the spring of 2012, we're going to see another approximately 500 megawatts of gas generation come on. New York City has not had a new major trunk line come in to the city itself in about 40 years. We are, as you probably know, crisscrossed with gas pipelines, but there's a pipeline project that's proposed by the Williams companies that will feed into Brooklyn and will serve the national grid, the Keyspan territory. So there are two projects, this pipeline, Spectra, of course, and we think it's important for reliability purposes, for air quality purposes, and just to assure greater security. There's a second factor as well. Some of you may be familiar with the Clean Heat program. When Mayor Bloomberg this last April put out the second iteration of Plan YC 2.0, if you will. I think the first item that he mentioned on the energy agenda was clean heat. And clean heat is simply the shorthand for a program that we now have instituted to take a number of buildings, in fact some 10,000 boilers in the city that currently burn oil and burn two of the most highly emitting forms of oil, namely number 6 oil, which essentially is bunker fuel, similar to that used by ocean-going vessels, and has a not very good emissions profile, and number 4 oil. 4 is essentially a blend of 6 and 2, but clean heat is intended to get people to migrate primarily to natural gas. And as I say, with some 10,000 boilers across the city, that's going to mean heightened demand for gas, both here in the Con Edison territory, where about 75 or 80% of those 10,000 boilers are, but also in the national grid or Keyspan territory out in Brooklyn and Queens. It's not visible to us ordinarily, but it's one that we all rely on, not obviously just for cooking gas, although that exists too, but most importantly for heating and for electric generation.
Well, we can bring gas in from the Northeast, the New England area. We can also bring gas from the typical area, the Gulf of Mexico, but we can also bring gas from out west, and also other development that's going on in Pennsylvania and areas into that where we have our existing systems. Within Manhattan, there's approximately 600 feet of pipeline that we'll be building once we make the shore approach off of the Hudson River. We'll be transporting 800 million cubic feet of natural gas within this 30-inch diameter pipeline.
FERC's comment period is over October 31st, and we're hoping for our permits the first quarter of next year, which is 2012.
Tony Mosd, who is our construction manager. Tony will walk through this.
The original alignment is the white line. We made landfall at the southwest corner of the peninsula, traveled along the peninsula, across the access road, cross Route 9A along Gansevoort Street, and then ended right here where the Whitney is going to be constructed.
We just don't go to the shelf and buy pipe that's available that maybe fits the wall thickness that we need. We just don't go buy a fitting and a valve. We are looking for, and we modify the chemical characteristics to make it high strength, very ductile pipe, or flexible when I mean ductile. When this pipe is manufactured, we don't just let the manufacturer roll it and they do their own internal inspection. We inspect it as well. the welders that are going to weld the pipe, and they have to go through a destructive test, which means we physically pull apart a test weld that they do. We x-ray 100% of all the welds. We will have inspection personnel out there overseeing and monitoring the work. Gus, on his side, on the environmental, will have environmental inspectors out there. One of our big concerns is third-party damage. That's where somebody comes out and digs and doesn't realize that there's a utility there, and we know that happens. We're going to utilize what's called a controlled density fill, which is a mixture of sand and cement, and it'll be dyed yellow. We use bright yellow ribbon, it's 2 foot wide, give them a toll-free number to call, fill it up with water, and we do what's called a hydrostatic test, where we pressure it up utilizing the water, and it will be pressurized 6 times higher than the pressure it will ever see. We're going to patrol the right-of-way 7 days a week. We're going to utilize remote control valves. You know, those valves are set up that they can close using natural gas, if the gas is there. But we don't use the gas in the pipeline. What we do is there's a volume bottle that will be utilized to support being able to cycle that valve 3 times. Our gas control group is monitoring the pressure when it goes through the valve, approximately about 2 1/4 miles from where our vault is, where it terminates near the Whitney Museum, heading to the east over in Jersey City. That's where we'll have a remote control valve. We'll also have valves in the vault as well. What that does is it isolates that section of the pipeline. Our system will be set up that we can run robotics inside the pipeline to determine if we need to do any type of analysis, maintenance, repairs of the system. And we'll do that periodically as the pipeline's in service. This will be one of the safest natural gas pipelines in the U.S.
Well, I have some concerns about the safety history of Spectra. I was appalled recently, or very concerned to learn recently that in June 2011, this year, that this company had was cited for 17 inadequacies in its safety operations and procedures, such as pipeline monitoring, emergency plans, and welding procedures. That there was an emergency shutdown of its Steckman Ridge, Pennsylvania compressor station, which released 1,629 pounds of lubricating oil and 6,460 pounds of methane onto farmland. That it has received the EPA's 7th highest penalty on record for discharging PCBs at 89 sites along a 9,000-mile pipeline. That it experienced a catastrophic failure of its underground storage reservoir in Mosd, Texas, causing 2 explosions with flames as high as 1,000 feet, and that 2 of its gas processing plants were named number 1 and number 3 polluters in British Columbia.
The reason this is going to be different, several of those facilities that you described are not an interstate natural gas pipeline. One of them is a storage field that you talked about. We're not building a storage field project. We're building an interstate natural gas pipeline. You talked about a facility in I believe you said Steckman Ridge, concerning a release of fluids to the air. This pipeline is not going to have any fluid. It's going to have natural gas in it. So the difference is, one, completely different type of facility that we're building. This is an interstate natural gas pipeline. 2, it's a closed system, so we're not going to be having any type of liquids that will be able to get into the system. And I went through and described the levels of protection and layers of safety that we as a company are committed to do. FERC in the dEIS has gone through and made their analysis as well, and they found something.
I live in that neighborhood, and if I plan on being here for 50 years, if the pipeline's only going to last for decades and decades, that could be 20 or 30 years. And how do you know? I mean, my concern is what happened in San Bernardino, California, particularly. It was a 40-year-old pipe. If that happens in this neighborhood, there could be casualties larger than 9/11.
It was a decade. That pipeline can last. Again, for as long as that need is there, there are pipelines that were built in 1920s that are still in service.
I noticed that the map that you brought out went right into Pennsylvania. Does Spectra obtain gases from hydrofracking?
Any shipper can have access to a pipeline to transport whatever type of natural gas from whatever region they want into our system.
Is in part, Western Pennsylvania has storage fields that are typically filled in the summer and then drawn against in the fall and winter. So that's been true historically, and I presume there are also some gathering lines in Pennsylvania, that, some of which, as you say, are probably from a hydrofracking source in Pennsylvania or West Virginia or
Spectra Pipeline, in your application, you stated that you will be bringing hydrofrac gas from Pennsylvania. Recent studies show that when we take the entire life cycle, the carbon footprint equivalent to that of coal or oil. So my question concerns, why are we taking the risk with Spectra Pipeline when you haven't provided a compelling reason for why we need additional natural gas supplies?
I think the current economics, the relative value proposition with gas and oil is such that I think most buildings, most people in the real estate community that we talk to the extent they're examining those options, tend to gravitate toward gas.
We're all on the same page, so